blocked from view because of the surviving buildings is the debris. It's really hard to give you a clear perspective. To try to wrap your arms visually around this is extremely difficult. You've seen the aerials, you've seen the tops, visuals from the tops of buildings, but it's only when you get on the ground and you look at it head on that it really, really strikes you. And again, the images just don't do it justice. You can see that it continues to burn. There is a lot of material in there, according to firefighters, that is causing those fires to drag on. They've been dousing it with water, been doing that all this morning. Steam and smoke is what is rising into the air. They say the reason for what those fires is the fact there's a lot of fuel in there, a lot of plastics, a lot of things are melting. It's a very intense, very hot fire. It is also a fire that burns slowly because it doesn't get a lot of oxygen because of all the material that is there. And that news conference you were showing us from the police there, that goes back to what we have been reporting earlier, that there is an effort underway on the recovery and the rescue effort to make it a more professional effort. That is not to demean or put down anyone who came in here to volunteer. It's just that they're getting to the point now where the heavy work is really going to begin. The lifting of girders, the moving of steel, the moving of concrete. It's got to be exact, it's got to be precise, and it's all got to be carefully orchestrated. Yes, there's still a need for the bucket brigades, but more and more it's going to be the needs for the cranes. It's going to need for the pipe fitters, for the iron workers, because this is where they get into the area. They've cleared the periphery. Now they're moving into the real debris zones, and quite frankly, the hope is very strong that someone can be found there. And they want to do it right, and they want to do it quickly. And so there is frustration. We saw some people here complaining they couldn't get in. They had come a long way. They wanted to get there and do the work. But right now they are focusing on specific contractors with the city to do this job and try to get it done properly. You can understand people want to do anything when they feel like they feel so helpless at this particular point, Bill.
Indeed they do. Marty, thank you. And on that same note, I want to take you across the street here. This is a local union for the New York City area. This is a specialty union here that goes with hazardous material handling. They go in and look for asbestos, other type of chemicals, and also the gruesome task of finding, locating, and removing body parts from inside the rubble as well. They've been waiting here for about 3 hours. They are telling us that they have been permission to go further south on the island, to go into the area, but they have not been given the A-OK just yet from FEMA. More on this momentarily, but we are on the west side of Manhattan at this staging point. On the east side of Manhattan, CNN's Elizabeth Cohen now, again outside the Armory this morning. Elizabeth, good morning. Elizabeth, can you hear me?
Right. I can, Bill. Now I can hear you. Bill, we're here at the Armory where since Wednesday, families have been coming to register information about their missing loved ones. They're asking for every detail about them. And then starting today, the authorities have been taking DNA samples from close family members so that it can be so that the DNA can be cross-matched with any remains that are seen. Let's take a look at what this corner is like. This has become there's a ground zero downtown for the physical devastation. This is a ground zero farther uptown for the emotional devastation. There are posters everywhere. People are posting pictures, physical details, phone numbers of their loved ones, hoping, praying, hoping, as one person said, against hope, that someone will have seen them. Now, we've talked to countless people since we've been standing on this corner ever since Wednesday, and up until around today, everyone we've talked to has had hope. Let's hear from a woman who we talked to on Wednesday and about who she's looking for.
We're just, getting her face out there so everyone can find her. And we've covered all the hospitals and have her on the missing persons. And everyone's here to support us, so it's great. So we just have to find her. We know we will.
And we have here with us a grief counselor. Barbara Debs is a licensed psychologist from Rochester. You came down here to work with a psychology from Rochester, and you came to do counseling with people. Can you tell me, do people still have as much hope as they did 3 days ago?
No, I don't think they do. I mean, as the days move on, I think people are just one day closer to perhaps having to accept that they're not going to find the person they're looking for. Yeah.
You were telling me earlier that on Wednesday that people were offered counseling, and many of them said, no, I want to go out, I want to go to the hospitals and look for people. Are people accepting counseling more now?
It feels that way to me, yes, definitely.
Okay. What do people want to talk about? Do they want to talk about how they're feeling, or do they want to describe their loved one to you?
Most of them talk about both how they're doing and talk to us about the person that they're looking for, and what the circumstances are at home. As a Red Cross disaster mental health person, we have training to try to discern what kind of support groups people have outside of the Compassion Center over here. Do you have family here? Do you have close friends here? Making sure that they have somebody that they can talk to when they leave here. Many of them are comfortable being here because I think it feels like they're doing something, and they're starting to reach out to one another too, which is great to see.
You mentioned that one woman said she didn't want to go home. Tell me why she didn't want to go home.
She told me that she didn't want to go home because she felt like she would be abandoning her husband.
You also mentioned a man who worked across the street. Tell me about him.
Just briefly, a man who worked across the street, he was in a tower across the street. His wife was in one of the Trade Center towers, and she's pregnant with their first child, and he made it out, and he doesn't know yet whether she did, but there's not a great deal of hope.
Okay, thank you. Barbara Debs, a psychologist from Rochester, New York, who came down here to help people in New York City. She has heard hundreds of these stories, and there are thousands more. Back to you.
Thousands and thousands more. Elizabeth, thank you. Quickly, just because I think it's very critical at this point, Michael Watts is from Queens. He's the supply manager. You regulate what comes in and what comes out. Tell us again what you need at this point.
Right now, what I need is boots, work shoes, anything with steel toes, goggles, gloves.
How is that response, Michael? Is it coming in?
The response is coming in. It's amazing the way that people are responding to these things. We received within the hour probably about maybe a good 5,000 respirators, different types of respirators, but the one we're basically looking for are the asbestos. Asbestos ones is like the high priority, along with the goggles and boots and heavy work gloves.
I know you're just working this corner at 34th and 11th Avenue, but do you know where people can give and contribute?
Yes, Yankee Stadium. They can go to Yankee Stadium. Not Yankee Stadium. The Giant Stadium, is one of them, because we have a staging area set up over here now for a lot of the trucks a lot of the stuff that we're not taking that we're become so overwhelmed with. We have to send stuff to Giant Stadium to store.
But as far as water and food at this point, you don't need it.
Water and food is not needed right now. We have more water here as there is debris downtown.
Okay, Michael, we'll talk again shortly. Okay,
Thank you very
Michael
much.
Watts from Queens. We'll talk to you in a moment, okay? Paula, again, the donations are appreciated, but they want to make sure they get the right donations at this point. Back up to you above the streets of Manhattan now.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you say that, because even as all of you were speaking, and we dipped in and out of that, the New York Police Commissioner Kerik was talking about how the unbelievable outpouring of support from folks all over the country is in fact clogging up logistics. So I guess he's telling us all to stand down for a while and, let's get this stuff sorted out. I want to go back to Martin Savage now, and I want you to stand by, Bill and Elizabeth, because I know it's hard to process everything you've seen in short reports. Martin, is there anything else you want to add to what you have witnessed this morning that you didn't get into your last report?
Well, I guess if you're sort of asking me my final thoughts, I'm still stuck on my beginning thoughts, and it is the beginning. I think that's one of the things that has struck me here, is that as you look back on that debris, as you look back on the job, this is, as far as this rescue operation, this is sort of a military operation unto itself. It is logistically positioning itself for the big push to go in there and dig. This is not a process that is going to be over in a few days. This is a process that goes on for a long time. The hardest thing of all is going to be, when do you finally call it? When do you say that this is not search and rescue, this is recovery? And my bet is it will be a long time before anyone makes that call. Paula? Yeah,
well, what you are saying right now mirrors what Mr. Kerik just said moments ago, and he basically confirmed that there are still pockets of open space under the fallen World Trade Center towers that continues to give them hope that survivors might still be found. How what level of optimism is there down there that that could potentially be the case?
Well, optimism is not a science, obviously, and it's difficult to say. It can vary from individual to individual that you talk to. I think a lot of people are still optimistic, and it's not that hard to see why. If you look at, say, Building 7 in the background there, yes, it's smoldering and it's collapsed, but you could also see perhaps the opportunity that there could be voids. There could be a place perhaps that someone could survive. And then you have to keep in mind that beneath the World Trade Center complex was a huge and very deep complex of underground levels. I think it goes down at least 6 levels, and that's actually deeper than 6 stories. So hope is not gone yet, and shouldn't be gone in the minds of many. And certainly, it's not gone in the minds of those who are working so desperately down at the site. Paula.
And Elizabeth Cohen, I think you can elaborate on this, but the feeling I've gotten this morning from interviewing folks who are desperately looking for family members is that they haven't given up hope. I don't know whether you were able to listen to that interview I did with Linda Perry, whose husband Rick Thorpe is missing. But, you know, she poignantly described how he was in the South Tower, which was the first tower that was hit, and actually called her to tell her what he was looking at. And during the course of one of their conversations, she heard the PA announcement telling everybody to stand by. And then she was screaming onto the phone, you know, get out of there now. And based on the contact or lack of contact she has with him, she's not sure whether he ever attempted to leave that floor. Elizabeth, how many stories have you heard like that this morning, where people, even given, you know, these facts that they've got right now, won't give up?
Over the past 3 days, Paula, I have heard so many stories like that of people who were in Tower 2 who, after the first explosion, called their families, said, don't worry about me, I'm okay, they're telling us to stay. And these people are obviously confused, more confused, I think, than angry about why they were told to stay. And in fact, one woman said that her husband's secretary said, I'm not going to listen to them, I'm out of here, and that her husband's secretary is alive and that her husband is missing.
Bill, I want to thread you back into this conversation. I know you reported earlier this morning that there were so many supplies coming in there. The folks in charge didn't even know what to do with it, and you interviewed a man that quite impressed me, who for 3 days in a row has been lined up hour after hour, and he still hasn't been given anything to do. Are those people taking seriously now the message that the city's giving them that, you know, we appreciate your help, but you know, stay out of here. You're messing up some of our coordination of efforts here?
To be quite honest with you, I think the words trickled through just yet, Paula. It may momentarily, especially after the interview we just had with the police commissioner. The man you just mentioned, though, a fellow by the name of Craig, he came here from Arkansas, drove up here all the way to try and pitch in. He was told just about an hour ago that he could move down the block here and be stationed with about 100 others. They were told anyway that it's quite possible that they would catch a bus and head south. But to be quite honest with you, Paula, we've been here for 6 hours. We have not seen any volunteers being taken out of here or headed down. And you heard Martin Savage report, and as we've been saying throughout the morning here, it appears that a handful of companies, maybe 4 or 5, have been singled out in Manhattan to take their workers and allow them to go in order not to demean, again, as Marty was mentioning, the work of any volunteers here, but just in order to take more of a grip and to handle the situation. If, in a manner of speaking, one could assume that the city of New York is starting to take much greater control. Again, we were told on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and up until about Thursday evening, the scene on the streets here in many locations in Manhattan had been one of chaos. It appears, though, that a firmer grip on organization has taken hold, and one would assume that that is good news anyway for the rescue efforts and especially the removal efforts down there in the lower part of the island. That would be a good thing at this point. But again, volunteers here, it's quite obvious they want to help, and they have not been called on. And that's a decision the officials in charge are making at this point. They don't need their help. And nonetheless, it probably makes them feel very good inside that they can show their support in this way.
All right, Bill Hemmer, Martin Savage, Elizabeth Cohen, thank you very much for your reflection. We will continue to come back to you through the day to get updates from your individual locations. As a footnote to what we were just talking about, charities are now asking for cash, no more food. Many are running out of space to store the overwhelming donations